Today, I have a story that will make you question everything. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where everything feels right, but you know it shouldn't be? What if the one person you could never imagine crossing a line with suddenly becomes someone you're drawn to in ways you never expected? This is exactly what happened to me when I reconnected with my dad's ex. It all started with a simple, seemingly innocent conversation, and ended with us both questioning what was right and what was taboo. Stick around because you won't believe how this story unfolds. Hey, I'm Ethan. I'm 22. I work part-time at a garage while trying to finish my degree in mechanical engineering. Not a fancy life, but it's honest, and I like it. My mom died giving birth to me. Yeah, I've lived with that weight my whole life. My dad, James, he raised me alone. A good man, but not the easiest. After Mom, he tried to find someone else over and over. Women came and went like seasons in our house. Nothing ever worked. But then when I was 20, he met this woman, Sophia. She was different, confident, calm, beautiful in a quiet, graceful way, not like the others. And for the first time, I actually thought maybe this one's going to stay. She moved in with us for about 3 months. I still remember how the house felt warmer when she was around. She cooked, talked to me like I mattered, not just as my dad's son. We actually connected. But things with James soured fast like they always did. Fights, silence. One day I came home and her stuff was gone. I never saw her again until 2 years later. It was a random Tuesday. I was doing laundry after work covered in grease and dust. The laundromat was mostly empty, just an older man in the corner with headphones. I dumped my clothes in a machine, turned around and froze. She was standing there. Sophia. Same sharp cheekbones, same soft eyes. And when she looked up, our eyes locked. For a second, she didn't recognize me. Then she smiled. Ethan. Her voice hadn't changed. Calm, warm. I nodded. Yeah, hey, wow. She walked closer, holding a folded towel. You've grown. I mean, of course you have. But look at you. We stood there awkwardly, both smiling. There was this weird mix of joy and tension hanging in the air. You still live around here? She asked. Yeah, same place, actually. She nodded slowly. How's James? I shrugged, still chasing something. Or someone. She gave a little laugh. Some things never change. I didn't know what to say next. Part of me wanted to ask her everything. Where she went, why she left, if she missed us, but I didn't. I just said, It's really good to see you, Sophia. You too, Ethan. Really. We talked for a bit. Nothing too deep. She told me she'd moved across town, works in real estate now. I mentioned schoolwork, the usual stuff. When my machine beeped, I started collecting my clothes. She hesitated, then reached into her bag. Here, she said, handing me a card. Her name and number were on it. Text me sometime. It'll be nice to catch up properly. I took it. I will, I said. I waited 2 days. Then I texted, Hey, Ethan here. Just wanted to say it was really nice seeing you. She replied in 5 minutes. Likewise, I honestly didn't expect to run into you like that. You made my day. From there, it was just easy. We started texting every couple of days. Memes, updates, little jokes, then phone calls, long ones, hours sometimes. We talk about everything. Music, old movies, weird memories from when she lived with us. She remembered the way I liked my eggs, the time I got grease on her white blouse from hugging her after work. I couldn't believe she remembered that. And then she said something that stuck with me. You always felt different. Not just like a son, more like someone I wanted to protect. That night, I couldn't sleep. My brain wouldn't shut off. I kept asking myself what I was doing. Was I crazy? Was this even okay? But I kept talking to her. I couldn't stop. A week later, she invited me for coffee. I said yes. I remember standing outside her apartment door holding 2 takeaway coffees. My hands were shaking a little, not because I was cold, but because I hadn't seen Sophia in a real private setting since she lived with us. And back then, things were different, safer, simpler. This time, I didn't know what I was walking into. She opened the door in jeans and a plain white t-shirt, barefoot, her hair down and natural. She smiled soft, not forced. Wow, she said. You actually came. You asked? I replied, lifting the coffees like a peace offering. She took one. Still remember how I like it. Almond milk, 2 sugars, no lid, I said. She gave me a look half impressed, half surprised. You really did remember. We sat on the couch, not too close but not far either. The TV was on mute in the background, some cooking show neither of us was watching. The conversation flowed like water, easy, warm, familiar. It started with safe stuff, school, my job, how she got into real estate, the crazy client she had to deal with. But then it started getting more personal, deeper, she said, looking at her cup. Your dad. He had this way of making everything feel temporary, even me, like I was just a guest. I didn't respond. I didn't know how to. I wasn't there to defend him. Truth is, I'd always felt the same. But you, she added, finally looking at me. You made me feel at home. There was again that shift in energy, that invisible line slowly moving. I missed you, I said before I could stop myself. She blinked. I didn't think I was someone you'd even think about. I did a lot more than I probably should have. It was a long silence. She didn't pull away, didn't laugh it off. She just stared at me, really stared. Do you ever wonder? She began, then paused. What if the timing had been different? I let out a breath. Yeah, I wonder. That night I didn't kiss her. I left after a couple hours, but as I stood at her door, shoes back on, keys in hand, she stepped closer. Not close enough to touch, but close enough for her perfume to linger on my clothes. I like talking to you, she said. I always did. I'll text you, I told her. You better. And I did. The next day, and the next. Texting turned into a daily habit. Then voice notes, then nightly calls. She told me about her childhood in Idaho, her first heartbreak, how she always wanted to live near water. I told her about my mom, how it felt growing up without her. She listened, really listened. No one ever had like that. And then one night around 11:00 p.m., she sent a voice note. Her voice was low, like she was speaking under a blanket. You know what's crazy, she said. You understand me better than any man I've been with, including your dad. I played that message 3 times. I didn't know what we were doing. It wasn't exactly flirting, but it wasn't innocent either. There was something building between us, quiet and slow, like a wave you don't realize is pulling you until your feet lift off the ground. 2 weeks later, we met again. She suggested a late lunch. I picked her up. We went to this small spot she liked on the edge of town, sat outside. She wore sunglasses and a denim jacket over a sundress. She looked younger than I remembered, or maybe I was just seeing her differently. We joked around a lot. But at one point, while I was telling her about this guy at work who nearly wrecked a customer's car, she reached across the table and touched my hand just briefly. You're becoming such a man, she said almost to herself. That moment burned into my brain. After lunch, I drove her back. When I stopped the car outside her place, she didn't get out right away. She just sat there, fingers on the door handle. You coming in? She asked, not looking at me. Should I wouldn't ask if I didn't want you to. Her place was the same as before, clean, calm, full of books and soft lights, but now it felt smaller, closer, like the walls were leaning in. We didn't kiss that night either, but we sat side by side on the couch, closer than last time. She showed me old photo albums, wanted a picture of us, me and my dad, from a camping trip. I looked so young. She looked happy. I wish things had gone differently, she said. Me too. Then she looked at me and whispered, We're not doing anything wrong, are we? It wasn't just a question, it was a boundary, a test, a moment we both knew mattered. I didn't answer right away, but I didn't move either. Instead, I just said, I'm still here. And I stayed. She texted me on a Friday evening, long week, wine and music tonight, come if you're free. No emojis, no explanation, just that. I stared at the message for a few seconds before replying. Be there in 30. I didn't overthink what to wear. I threw on a black t-shirt, jeans, and grabbed a jacket just in case it got cold later. But truth be told, I was nervous. More nervous than I wanted to admit. Something about the way she'd worded that message, it felt different. Less casual, more open. When I got to her place, the front door was already ajar. I knocked lightly and stepped in. Sophia in the kitchen, she called. She was barefoot again in a loose, light gray sweater that hung off one shoulder and black leggings. Her hair was pulled up a few strands, falling around her face. She was pouring wine into 2 glasses. A jazz playlist hummed in the background. "Hey," she said softly when she saw me. "Glad you came." "You sure?" I asked, half joking. She smiled. "Very." We sat on the couch this time without the space we used to keep between us. She handed me a glass and curled up sideways, legs tucked beneath her. I stayed upright for a while, unsure where to put my free arm. We talked about nothing and everything, how cold the mornings were, getting a weird neighbor she had upstairs, my professor who always mixed up students' names, but the tone was different. At one point she asked, "Do you ever think about leaving town?" "Sometimes," I said, "but I don't know where I'd go. This place, it's all I've ever known." "I think about it a lot," she said. "Sometimes I want to just disappear for a while, start fresh alone." She paused. "Not necessarily." There was a silence after that, the kind of silence that says more than any sentence could. Her glass was half full. Mine was empty. I got up to pour myself another. When I returned, she had changed the music. Something slower, now softer. She moved her legs to make space for me. When I sat, she leaned slightly against my shoulder. Not all the way, just a light touch. "I used to dream of a life that felt quiet," she said like this. I didn't say anything. I just listened. My hand was resting between us, and slowly she placed hers on top of it. Not as a tease, not as a move, just placed there gently. "I shouldn't be saying this," she whispered, "but I don't want to be alone tonight." My heart was racing, but I didn't jump or make a move. I just turned to her and looked her in the eyes. "You're not alone," I said. She leaned closer. Our foreheads touched first. Then her lips brushed mine. Not hungry, not rushed, just slow, like a question she already knew the answer to. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't some Hollywood scene. It was real, intimate quiet and completely natural. When we pulled away, she smiled almost sadly. "This is crazy," she said. "Yeah," I agreed. "But it doesn't feel wrong." "No," I said. "It really doesn't." She stood up and held out her hand. "Come with me." I followed her into the bedroom. She didn't close the door all the way. The hallway light spilled into the room, casting a soft glow. We didn't rush anything. We didn't cross any lines we weren't ready to cross. We just lay there side by side, her head on my chest, my fingers tracing small circles on her arm. We talked more. She told me how lonely she'd been since James. How strange it felt to have someone see her again, not as someone's girlfriend, but as a woman, as a person. "I thought I was done feeling this way," she admitted. "I didn't think I'd ever feel this way," I said. She laughed a little, then went quiet. Eventually, she drifted off to sleep. I stayed awake for a while, staring at the ceiling, her hand resting on my stomach. I didn't know what this meant, what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel lost. In the morning, the sunlight filled the room. She woke up first and slipped out to the kitchen. I heard her making coffee, humming softly. I pulled on my shirt and walked out. She handed me a mug without a word, just a knowing smile. We sat on the balcony together, sipping quietly. The world felt still. "Last night didn't scare you?" she asked eventually. "No," I said. It made things clearer for me, too. We didn't define it. We didn't make promises, but we both knew something had shifted. Something we weren't ready to stop. It had been 3 weeks since that night at her place. Since everything changed, but we didn't talk about it much afterward, not directly. There was no dramatic, "what are we now" conversation, no big decision. It just continued like a quiet current underneath our lives, pulling us back to each other. I'd see her too sometimes, 3 times a week, always in the evenings, always at her place. She never came to mine. That felt too risky, too exposed. At my apartment, I had roommates, neighbors, people who knew me. At hers, it was just us. We cooked together sometimes. Simple meals, pasta, grilled chicken, roasted vegetables. She liked when I helped with the dishes, said it made the place feel more alive. She had this playlist. She always put on soft acoustic stuff that filled the silence without demanding attention. Sometimes we'd just sit on the couch and read, not even talk much. She'd curl up next to me with her book. I'd scroll through class notes or pretend to study. Other times we'd talk for hours about her old life, about mine, about nothing at all. She started opening up in ways she hadn't before. Told me about the first time she'd ever felt loved and how short it lasted. Told me about the miscarriages she had in her 30s. How that changed her, how it made her afraid to hope for anything again. I didn't know what to say most of the time. I wasn't there to fix her. I just listened, and she did the same for me. I told her about my mom, how I sometimes felt guilty for being born, how James had loved her so much that I always felt like I was living in a shadow, how every girlfriend I ever had never lasted because I kept them at a distance without even meaning to. She didn't tell me I was wrong. She didn't try to reassure me. She just nodded. Yeah, I get that. And I knew she did. We never planned anything in advance. It was always just a text. Her, you free tonight? Me want me to bring anything, her, just you. It worked. It was secret, sure, but it didn't feel dirty. It didn't feel wrong. It felt like something that was ours and ours alone. One evening we were sitting on our balcony, wrapped in a blanket, sharing a bottle of wine. The sun was setting, casting the kind of golden glow that makes the world feel softer than it is. She looked at me and said, "Do you ever wonder where this is going?" I didn't answer right away because I did. Of course I did. But part of what made it work was not asking that out loud. I think about it. I admit it. But I also know I don't want it to stop. She nodded slowly. Me neither. That was enough. There were moments when it felt dangerous. Not in a physical way, just emotionally. Like we were walking a line we didn't know how to define. One night after we'd been intimate, she laid her head on my chest and whispered, "What if someone finds out I brushed her hair away from her face?" "Then they do," I said. "But that doesn't make it wrong." She looked up at me. "Your dad would kill me. He doesn't even talk about you anymore." I said, "You're not his problem. You're not his anything." But I wasn't even part of that. I just wanted her to stop worrying about him. This isn't about him. She exhaled slowly. "I know, but sometimes when I wake up next to you, I forget who I'm supposed to be. I didn't fully understand that at the time, but I heard it. I took it in and kissed her forehead like it was my way of saying, then be whoever you want. We never took photos, no selfies, no social media, no text that could be misread or screenshotted out of context. We were careful not because we were ashamed, but because it was fragile, precious. There was a night when I was almost caught. My dad called me late while I was at her place. I didn't answer. He texted, "Haven't seen you around lately. Everything okay?" I stared at the screen for a while before replying. I had just been busy with school and work. He responded with a thumbs-up emoji. That night she looked at me and said, "Do you ever feel guilty?" I shook my head. "Do you?" She hesitated. "Only when I imagined him finding out, but not about us." She smiled. "Never." That was the truth. Whatever it was, whatever label anyone else might try to put on it, it was real, and it was working for both of us. We didn't talk about the future. Not really, not in concrete terms. But one night as I was leaving, she walked me to the door and said, "Same time next week." I smiled. Sooner. It's been almost a year now. A full year of seeing her, of coming over late and leaving early, of never mentioning her name when I'm with friends, of watching my phone light up with her texts and smiling like an idiot every time it does, of keeping everything between us wrapped in quiet and shadows. Not because we're ashamed, but because we know how people would react. My dad still doesn't know, and honestly, I don't think he ever will, not unless we decide to tell him. And lately, I don't think we will. Things have settled into a rhythm. I finish class, go to work, eat something quick, and if it's one of our nights, I head to her place. Sometimes I stay over, sometimes I don't. But every time I leave, she walks me to the door, touches my face, and looks at me like she doesn't want to let go. And every time I come back, it's like that first time all over again. She's become more than a lover. She's my closest friend, my safe space, the one person who listens when I say things I've never said out loud. The one who doesn't judge me for how I grew up, for the things I feel, for the things I want. But we both know the world wouldn't understand this. That's why we never go out together. Not during the day, not around people we know. One time we ran into someone from her work while getting gas, and she tensed up so quickly I thought she might faint. She played it off, said I was her nephew. We laughed about it later, but I could tell it shook her. Still, we never stopped. One night, a couple of months ago, we were in bed after watching a movie. I was half asleep when she whispered, "Do you ever wish we could just be normal?" I opened my eyes, looked at her. What's normal? Being able to hold your hand in public, go out to dinner, not worrying about who sees us. I didn't answer right away. I knew what she meant. I wanted that too. But I also knew something else. What we had wouldn't survive if we tried to drag it into the daylight too soon. So I said, "This works because it's ours. No one else has a say in it." She nodded, and that was that. But in the past few weeks, something shifted. It started with small things. She'd look at me longer than usual, like she was searching for something. She started asking deeper questions about what I wanted out of life, where I saw myself in 5 years. I didn't mind, but I could feel her weighing something heavy. Then, one night, as I was helping her clean up after dinner, she dried her hands, turned to me, and said, "I have to ask you something." "Okay," I said. If we stayed exactly like this for the next few years, no one knows. No future plans. Just this meeting, like this. Would you be happy?" The question hit hard. I didn't answer right away. I just stood there holding a wet plate, thinking about what it would mean to keep living in the in-between, never fully in the open, never part of each other's real lives, just this hidden bubble we built. I put the plate down and looked at her. "Are you asking me if I see a future with you?" "No," she said quietly. "I'm asking if you want one." That night, we sat on the couch, lights off, candles flickering, and we talked. Really talked. Not around things. Not in riddles, just straight out. She told me she loved me, that she hadn't planned to, that it scared her, that sometimes she felt like she was stealing time from a life I hadn't lived yet. I told her I loved her too. That I didn't care what people thought, that what we had felt more real than anything I'd had before. Then she asked, "Do you want to keep living in secret, or do we do this for real?" I thought about it, about the risks, about my dad, about the judgment, about the way people would look at us, about the questions, the whispers, and I said I want to do this for real. She smiled, not a big smile, a quiet, tearful one, like someone who'd been holding her breath for too long, and finally exhaled. The next day, she deleted all her dating apps. She told her sister about us. I haven't told my dad yet, but I know I will eventually. We still keep things private, but not secret. We go out sometimes, not far, but far enough to hold hands in public and not worry about running into anyone. She calls me her boyfriend now, and it feels normal, not forbidden, not strange, just real. One night a few weeks ago, we were sitting on her porch watching the rain. I had my arm around her shoulders. She leaned into me, quiet, content. Then she said it again. That line, she said, "The very first night something happened between us." She looked up at me and whispered, "We're not doing anything wrong, are we?" And this time, I didn't hesitate. "No," I said, "we're not. Because we're not. We're just two people who found something that works, something that feels good, something that makes us both better. And if that's wrong, then I don't want to be right." As I reflect on everything that's happened, I can't help but wonder, are we really doing anything wrong, or are we simply caught up in a moment that feels too right to walk away from? It's easy to judge from the outside, but when emotions get involved, everything becomes blurred. Do you think relationships like this can truly work, or are they destined to fail? Could this be the beginning of something beautiful, or a disaster waiting to happen? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'm eager to hear what you think. And don't forget, hit the subscribe button and press the number 1 to show your support. Your engagement keeps me going, and I can't wait to bring you more stories just like this.